This is the Bears Barroom Radio Network, and the following program is suitable for all audiences.
Buffone. A certain magic will always linger with the very name. It speaks of courage and fervor in the world's most brutal game. 55, worn by Doug Buffone, a Chicago Bear through and through. He demanded excellence of himself and anyone wearing navy blue.
You tell me what's going on. This is moronic. We're going to get our whipped all the way down the line. I want somebody to get kicked in the and get out there and play. You're getting paid to play this game. And play it right. I don't mind you getting beat. I got my whipped many times. But I tell you, I took somebody down with me. You are a professional team. Act like one, for God's sakes.
Football fans, this is Buffone 55, the John Buffone Show.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Buffone 55, the fastest-paced Chicago Bears podcast available. I am your host, John Buffone. Barflies, it's been a while, hasn't it? But I'm glad to be back on the air. The draft, it's over. Rookie camps are beginning and stopping. Now we start looking ahead to the 2019 season. Woo, what a time to be alive. If you're listening to us live on mixlr.com, get ready to interact with us. We got some awesome guests lined up. The authors of the 2018 Chicago Bears Return to Respectability, Stephen Leventhal and Charlie Bevins, are here to talk to us. But before we get to that, me and my trusty producer, Aldo Gandia, have some business to take care of. Aldo, you awake over there? You haven't done this in a while.
I haven't, but I think I remember how to do this. And just to remind our audience that we always begin the show and end the show with our 555 segment. That's where I ask John 5 questions. He's got 55 seconds to respond to each one. And after those 55 seconds, we'll turn into the next question. And I'm hesitating here because my soundboard is just going nuts here. Stop.
It's been a while. It's okay. Shake the rust off, buddy. We'll be all right.
There you go. So let's get to it. Are you ready for the first question?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right. David Montgomery, he's been compared to Kareem Hunt. Do you see similarities? And if so, what are they? On top of that, do you think Montgomery can approach Hunt's rookie number of 1,327 yards rushing, 455 receiving yards, and a total of 11 touchdowns? That's what Hunt had in his rookie year. John, you are on the clock.
You know, I do see some similarities in shiftiness, some solid catching ability, not superior, but good, and some pass blocking to go along with it. He doesn't have any glaring holes. He can be the battering ram with his 5'10", 222-pound frame. He ran a 4.6 40, and he can make the first tackler miss. Listen, I love Jordan Howard, but if you think the Bears let Howard go and then drafted a carbon copy of him in Montgomery, I don't think you're watching the tape. I think Montgomery rounds out the running back core very nicely because he has all the tools needed for a Nagy offense. He has some flash. He can catch, block, and bust up between the tackles. As far as the Kareem Hunt stats go, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, but let's not get disappointed if he doesn't. Remember, Kareem Hunt was thrust into the starting position after Spencer Ware got hurt in the preseason and was out the entire year. Hunt was given 272 carries his rookie year. The second highest rusher on that Chiefs squad that year, Alex Smith. And remember, he used to be a quarterback. Sharkandrick West got 18 carries that year. He was the backup running back. See, the Bears have Montgomery, but they also have Tariq Cohen. They signed Mike Davis. They want fresh legs on the field well into December, January, and God willing, February.
Oh, good stuff. Boy, you are in mid-season form there, John. Well done.
I did some stretching. We're good.
Okay. Question number 2. Calvin Ridley, brother of Bears' 4th-round pick, Riley Ridley. Now, he's drilled into the Bears' new wide receiver that running great routes is the best way to win a quarterback's trust. So, this wide receiver comes to Chicago with a portfolio of great route running. But there's more to Ridley than just the ability to create separation. I know since you're in midseason form, I'm going to ask you what those are. You've got 55 seconds.
Oh, man, legacy guys are always interesting because they automatically get hyped to their dad, brother, sibling, whatever. Look at Jordan Palmer, the other Gronks, they do exist. Remember Luke Butkus out of Illinois, the nephew of Dick Butkus? He was at training camp for the Bears in 2002, bounced around NFL Europe. He's actually an assistant O-line coach in Green Bay now. Gag. But anyway, I digress. But there are some other family connections that actually do work. Rondé, Tiki Barber, the Bennett brothers, hell, throw the Gruden brothers in there if you want to get crazy. But with Riley Ridley, I see a tough route runner that's going to do the dirty work. He's not afraid to go into the middle and take a shot. I have noticed that he has a knack of finding the holes in a defense. He's very aware of his surroundings, very precise route runner. There's some questions about his quickness off the snap sometimes, but he has great hands, and I can see him actually working into the rotation a little bit this year. He has a great person to confide in his brother in Calvin to understand what it takes to succeed in the NFL. I think he's a really good fit for the Chicago system. Gritty kid, tough kid. I think most Bears fans will appreciate that.
One of the things that Danny Shimon, our draft analyst, told me about Ridley is that he's got the largest wingspan of anybody on the team. Wow, that is pretty awesome. I remember
that's a catch radius right there. That's something you always want.
Yeah, exactly. I remember DeAndre Hall when he was drafted, a couple of years ago. He had an incredible wingspan, but unfortunately, things didn't work out for him in Chicago. But I think things are going to really work out for Mr. Riley Ridley.
It's a great weapon to have.
Yep. All right, here we go with question number 3. Duke Shelley, the 5'9", 181-pound cornerback the Bears chose in round 6, was Pro Football Focus's highest-graded corner in the SEC last season. What are the qualities you like in his play, and what might concern you?
Aldo, I'll be honest, when I heard this pick, I was like, all right, who the hell is this guy? A 5'9", 180-pound, which is being generous, I think, corner from Kansas State. I didn't watch as much Kansas State football as one might think, and I apologize for that. So I'm looking over his tape, and I like that he seems to always be around the ball. When the ball is tipped, Shelley kind of flies in from nowhere and can come up with it. For his lack of height, he's able to contest a lot of balls, and his fire kind of jumps off the screen. This guy has a lot of energy. He's a little firecracker. So what does concern me, however, is how he's going to adjust to NFL receivers. He runs a 4.40, but doesn't always show that burst. There could be the potential there that he gets toasted downfield. And will he be able to contest those high point balls against big receivers in the NFL? I think he has the potential to, but I think that's going to be a huge challenge that's going to face him. I don't think he's a great open field tackler either, but that can be developed sometimes. I think Shelley, with some grooming and learning and tutelage, could become an effective slot corner, which we know is a very important position on the field.
Our scouts here, Danny and Shane, they were with you when Duke Shelley's name was called. They were like looking at each other. Oh, we forgot to scout this guy.
Yeah.
But subsequently, they've looked at tape, and there's some encouraging signs in this young man. So we'll be keeping a close eye on him when we get down to Bourbonnais.
Yeah, I think it's a guy to keep an eye on. I mean, they drafted him for a reason, so we'll see what that reason is.
Exactly. Question number 4. Just like the wide receiver position, the running back position is now loaded. Mike Davis, Tariq Cohen, and third-round pick David Montgomery will likely be your game day starters, but Ryan Nall is someone fans should not sleep on, because if he has another preseason like he had last season, wow, he's going to fight for a roster spot. Then there is 7th-round pick Kareth White. He wowed people in camp this past weekend, the rookie minicamp, with his scintillating speed. Tell us what you've seen and heard of White and how good you feel about these skill positions of the Bears.
I'm going to start real quick with the wide receiver position because I think it's important to point this out. Kendall Wright, Josh Bellamy, Dontrell Inman, Marcus Wheaton, and pieces of Kevin White. That was 2017. In 2 years, it has transformed into Allen Robinson, Taylor Gabriel, Anthony Miller, Cordero Patterson, Javon Wims, Riley Ridley, both of the Hall boys, and Tanner Gentry. Let that sink in for just a second. Now, let's bounce over to the running back. Some thought on White was he might have been the more explosive back over at Florida Atlantic over Devin Singletary. We'll see about that. But I see a guy that invites contact. sometimes a little too much. You sometimes see that straight-up running style that can get you hurt. But here's a guy that was used as a kickoff returner. He can fight through arm tackles, and he has the base to be a solid runner. He needs a lot of seasoning, but he's physical and can burn guys in the open field. He could find himself a spot on this roster. As for Nall, I know he's a fan favorite. There's a few routes the Bears could go with this. Maybe he makes it as a straight-up running back on the roster. Maybe they want to see if they can transition him over to that Michael Burton role. Thank God he's off the team. He could become Chicago's version of John Kuhn. Big guy, 6 foot, 240 pounds. That's an intriguing option. Or they could try to stash him on the practice squad again, but I think somebody scoops him up.
I agree. Yes, and it is nice to say that Mr. Burton is no longer a member of the Chicago Bears.
I had to get that in. I had to get it in.
Very well played. All right, our final question before we bring our guests in. The Bears' final draft pick, Steven Denmark, could be this year's Bilal Nichols, like an unexpected immediate contributor to the defense. He's got measurables that are ridiculous, but he lacks experience. For your followers who don't know much about Denmark, fill them in and share your realistic expectations for the defensive back. You are on the clock.
Although anyone who listens to the show knows I'm a sucker for size, and I'm a fan of the measurables. 6'3", 220 pounds, runs a 4.4, and has a 43.5-inch vertical. This guy is a wide receiver turned into a cornerback. Only played 1 year of corner at Valdosta State, which I'm told is in Georgia. I'm sure it's beautiful. D2, plenty of great athletes in D2, however. He posted 55 tackles, 8 for a loss, 3 interceptions, and 9 pass breakups. He's super physical and likes blitzing, it appears, from looking at his tape. I think he was really physical at times because he was still polishing his skills. He relies on his athletic prowess, which, by the way, is fine if you're a 6'3", 220-pound player who's at cornerback. If he refines some of his coverage skills, all of a sudden you got a monster. I think this is an incredibly intriguing pick in the 6th round because this is what you want whenever you're taking guys in the 5th, 6th, 7th round. You want a ton of potential that isn't going to be thrust into the fire right away, and not to mention, at his size and speed, he could be an instant spark on special teams. So I think this is. I'm going to keep my eyes on this kid. I think it's a very intriguing pick. But with that being said, it's time to bring in the authors of the 2018 Chicago Bears Return to Respectability, Mr. Stephen Leventhal and Charlie Bevins. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm a little sunburnt after spending the afternoon down at Wrigley Field, but I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me on.
John and Aldo, thanks a lot for having us on and giving us opportunity to talk about the Bears.
Hey, this is what we do best. This is what we love to do the most. So this is going to be kind of an open-ended forum. Whoever feels like they're best equipped to answer my questions, feel free to jump in. This show is always chaos, so don't feel like you're breaking up any kind of rhythm we got here, because quite frankly, we have none. So you start the book by writing about the hiring of Matt Nagy. Was there anything in that opening press conference that you found kind of prophetic, whether it was something that Coach Nagy said or maybe GM Ryan Pace? Was there anything that you guys took out of that first press conference?
Well, to be honest with you, when I was thinking about that notion, this was the 4th Bears introductory coach press conference that I've attended. So, that goes all the way back to, Lovie Smith, Dick Duran, John Fox, Mark Trestman. And actually, I couldn't say that I felt that instantly. I actually had a better feel when Lovie Smith was introduced. You know why? Because one of the things he got out there and he was right out front about it, he says, we're going to beat the Packers. And that just resonated across the room, if you remember that.
Yeah.
With Nagy, I really can't say that, because if you look back at it was a lot of, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I mean, I would say his humility probably struck me the most. I couldn't say that I caught that spark, where in my opinion, that really sort of came on and really got a lot stronger as they moved through rookie minicamp, OTAs, and training camp. I think is really where it just resonated, because the players, he has this enthusiasm. And all season long, when we talked to the players, they would tell you it was all about his enthusiasm and his youth and his feel for the game and kind of getting in there and being a player's coach. That's really where they all connected with him.
I'm going to throw this out to both of you. What was the process of writing this book? First of all, what was the inspiration to writing this book, and what was the process of putting it all together? Because quite frankly, you got it out pretty quick. Granted, you're covering an entire season. So what was the process of making this book?
I'm a student at DePaul, and one of my professors, his name was Phil. He introduced me to Steve to do some coverage with the Cubs and White Sox over the summer, and that kind of transgressed into me writing for the Bears. And I think it was about week 3 or 4 of the season, Steve kind of approaches me and says, look, you and I have been kind of doing a good job on this coverage. So, I'm thinking at the end of the year, we can try to put this together as a whole book. And, correct me if I'm wrong on anything, Steve, but that's kind of where the ball started rolling on that.
Yeah, I mean, our company, SRN Broadcasting, has been covering sports in Chicago for quite a long time. Unfortunately, it seems like we fly under the radar because not a lot of people know about us. But we have a pretty active blog, and the Bears had encouraged us to be a little more active in terms of our coverage. So we decided to do, and Charlie offered to do kind of a Monday morning quarterback. And I said, well, we should also do a game preview. So we've been doing these pretty much every week. And like he says, a couple of weeks in, I said, you know what? It doesn't matter what happens. I mean, we had no clue other than, the signing of Khalil Mack that there might be something special here. But I said, you know what, Charlie? No matter what happens this season, let's do it in book form. So it all kind of came together after the season. We said, you know what? It really was a good season. Maybe they didn't win the Super Bowl. Maybe they didn't really get past the first round of the playoffs. But there's a story here. So let's take all these little blog posts that we did, and we'll turn them from a weekly thing and cobble them together as a story and tie them together. And I like to do a lot of these little behind-the-scenes things, like you mentioned Ryan Nall when you were talking about in your 5 for 55. I interviewed him because, again, I like the sort of the underdog, the guy who's trying to make it. So I write all these stories. So between what Charlie did and what I did, I thought we had something here.
That's an awesome process, and going through, and I think that brings stories to light that wouldn't necessarily, be spotlighted without digging deep like that. So that's to make for an interesting story. We talked about the draft in the first segment. I want to go back a year before this year, back to 2018. How important was the 2018 draft in returning the Bears to respectability, and kind of what's your opinion on Ryan Pace's drafts overall?
For me, at least last year, the thing that stuck out to me was the 2017 draft was where you really found like these really big, impactful contributors, your Tariq Cohens, your Eddie Jacksons, who obviously went on, and you found your quarterback in that draft. 2018 is kind of sustaining that level of competition and success. Where 2018 you're able to find Roquan Smith, who I think has an opportunity to be one of the best linebackers in football. You find James Daniels to shore up your interior. You find Anthony Miller to just get another weapon for Trubisky, and you're able to find that depth. So, and then you've seen it in the past too with, Pace finding these guys in later rounds, Cody Whitehair in the second round. He's able to, the front of the draft is kind of where he finds those big contributors like your Roquan Smiths, your Trubiskys, but he's also able to find those contributors on the back end and, a couple all-pros in the process as well.
And in the book, you guys remind us of many of the things that transpired throughout OTAs and camp, including Coach Nagy's resting his players in week 3 of the preseason against the Chiefs. That actually was a firestorm on the Bears Barroom Radio Network. A lot of different opinions on that. Many people criticized the decision, saying the starters needed reps. Other people said maybe he's kind of progressive thinking and trying to keep his guys healthy. Looking back, is it fair to say that wasn't such a bad call on his part?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to look back on that without incorporating too much hindsight. But yeah, that was a game they actually, kind of dominated the Chiefs' ones in that game, if I remember correctly. But yeah, it's just another week for those players to rest up. And, look, I mean, the team ended up making the playoffs, so probably wasn't a huge deal.
Right. And let's talk about the chapter called The Window is Set. But can both of you kind of chime in on what that means, the window is set, whenever they're reading through the book?
Yeah, so for me, that kind of 2021, 2020 window, that's when a lot of these contracts start, you kind of have to start worrying about them. Your draft picks as well as, Allen Robinson, Taylor Gabriel, those sorts of guys. So that's not to say Ryan Pace wouldn't be able to, find replacements for those guys. But like 2021, that's when a lot of these rookies need to be extended, or these guys on rookie contracts need to be extended. That's when, you kind of have to make some tough decisions. So if you want to really win with this core you have right now, that's kind of your window. And I think the addition of Khalil Mack and the subtraction of 2 first-round picks kind of ups the urgency to that.
The book has a lot of components to it, including giving a game-by-game accounting of the Bears' 2018 season. You wrote about Trubisky's 6-touchdown performance, but you also remind readers that this is the first time that the young quarterback really looked sharp for an entire game. Tell us about your analysis of the quarterback and to this point, up to that point in 2018 and beyond.
That was the first game where it looked like it was all clicking. The Packer game, you wanted more. Seahawks game, you wanted more. But right around that Tampa Bay game, it's like, all right, like this is what this offense can look like when it's being run to its full capacity. Albeit, Tampa Bay isn't a great team, but not only is it the first time Trubisky's running an actual modern day offense, unlike the year before with Fox, he's also doing it to its full capacity. And that to me was what really stuck out, because to that point, there was still a lot of, it looked like he was taking his time processing. You're still seeing some head scratching decisions, but that game against Tampa was really the first time where it's like, all right, yeah, this can be really great.
And also, you have to remember how they were injured a lot last year. Had an offensive line that was, worse than a MASH unit. So you've got the addition of more pieces, a much better defense. Now you don't have an offense that's running on and off the field, and they just had an opportunity to gel.
Yeah, I think that becomes a big part of it, where there actually is time there for chemistry, which is, I think, flies under the radar because you can't put that into a box score and you can't put that into a stat book, but it certainly is part of the game and part of team building. Part of your book is some partial transcripts of interviews you did on your podcast. People like sports writers Patrick Finley, John Mullen, broadcasters Deion Miller, and more. For both of you, which are some of those people that you interviewed shared something about the 2018 season that was kind of not maybe an eye-opener, or maybe something that was different, or maybe kind of gave you a different aspect or a different viewpoint on some things?
Well, let me kind of set the table for that one, because a lot of this came out of the fact John Mullen of Comcast Sports Network is a good friend of mine. He's probably been one of the few people that have covered the team longer than I have. And we used to just chat about what was going on. So I very, very distinctly remember when the Bears had that little open training camp at Vernon Hills High School. We're sitting in the stands. We got to watch it like everybody else. And I posed a question to him. I said, and again, this was before the Khalil Mack signing, I said, how is this team improved at all, especially on defense from last year? And he says, well, not really. We just interchanged a few parts. And having had that conversation and others, I said, well, I said, well, do you mind if we chat throughout the season and talk about these kind of things? He said, absolutely no problem. So shortly after the season began, I got him on microphone. I used it for one of our podcasts. And I said, wow, this is great. This is gold. So I'm friendly with a lot of people that cover the team on a regular basis. So if you get a hold of the book, you'll see I talked to Patrick Finley. I talked to Dan Weaver, Deion Miller, lovely person, terrific lady, great friend. And they were all giving us information. I just like to get some of their insights, and maybe when they're sort of off script or off camera, they can be a little more candid. So hopefully that kind of comes through.
Yeah, and then for me, I mean, those are pretty much all Steve, because, he was the one actually going to the practices and, really getting in there with all the audio and all that stuff. So for him, I mean, Steve handled all of those with those media interviews.
Excellent. And, Coach Nagy has said that the November 18th primetime game against the Minnesota Vikings was the game that made him think that perhaps this team really did have a chance to do something special. Can you guys kind of recount that game for us? And did you maybe think that's whenever you thought the Bears had something cooking?
I think it was, because, to that point, not only, they did it on primetime, first of all. That was the game I took my friend to, who doesn't care at all about football. I took him to that, and I said, you're going to love this game. You're going to love this atmosphere. And he walked away, and he's pretty much a football fan at this point.
There you go.
So, that game, that intensity where it really kind of like spoke to the national audience. Like, this is the team that was supposed to win the division. This is the team that was in the NFC Championship game last year that got, the hot quarterback on the free agent market. This is the team that was supposed to go far in this year's playoff. And we just beat them, and we beat them pretty easily. And so, to me, that was like, this team's legit. Like, this defense can pick up for an offense that's still kind of growing. This is a team that, A, like, you can see it on the field. They love playing with each other. And B, it's a team that the city loves.
For sure. And, the Bears, of course, They fell short of the title of your book being Return to the Top. But can you guys list me, 2 to 3 things that you expect to see how the 2019 season rolls out? Given that you were so dug into the 2018 season, how did that set the plate for you going into 2019?
Well, one of the things that you're going to have to look at is there were no expectations at all in 2018. If they had won 6 or 7 games, people probably would have been ecstatic. Hey, it's an improvement, where they're definitely going in the right direction. But now all of a sudden, you added a couple of key pieces. The team just gelled. They won all those games. Now the bar's a lot higher. So the real question is, what are the expectations going to be for 2019, and how realistic are they? How much better? Now, if they don't make the playoffs, it's going to be disappointing.
Yeah, for me, I'm not necessarily, worried about defensive regression in the part of Fangio, but I'm really interested to see, just on a specific level, how Roquan Smith grows. Because, like I said earlier, I really do think he can be great. His impact on the defense is one of the big reasons I don't expect a whole lot of regression, just to have that guy sort of patrolling the middle of the field, the way he can cover passes and then stopping the run. I mean, I really do think he could be special for that defense. And on the offensive side, particularly in that Eagles game, you could really see the connection between Trubisky and Robinson start to grow. And I think kind of the whole the latter half of the season was really leading up to that point where, like, these guys have something, and it's something that can be built upon. Allen Robinson at one point led the NFL in touchdowns. So I think that growing chemistry with Trubisky's receivers and just his comfortability in the offense, his playmaking decisions, his recognition of what's going on in the field, I expect that to improve. And if that improves, that's a whole offense that could take even one more step.
And,
I'm sure Bears fans would love that.
Can add one other thing. Is if you think about this, last year everything was brand new. New coaching, new offensive system, new playbook. All of that is old hat. So one of the things that a lot of the players discussed, Kyle Long, I specifically remember him saying that, was when they go into this year, when they go into OTAs, when they go into training camp, they don't have to learn the system. They kind of know the system. So you've totally raised the floor for what they can do.
Oh, without a doubt, because now it's not a learning curve as much as it is refining your skills and polishing what you already have in store. Aldo, before I let these guys go, do we have any action in the chat room?
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions, and I'd like to add one of my own. So I got a total of 3. Let's start with Ryan Badgley's question. He wants to know from each of you, what was your favorite moment in 2018, and maybe even in following the Bears ever? If you've got a favorite moment that you could share with our listeners.
I think favorite moment of all time for the Bears is that Hester touchdown in the Super Bowl. I was just so young, and I was probably 7 years old, but I just remember being out of my mind about that. And then from this past season, that strip sack Khalil Mack had in the Seahawks game I was at, and when he just runs by and kind of flicks his hand to the crowd, I was like, oh man, this is 6 years of this. So that probably mine.
It's so funny. You talk about the Devin Hester touches. I was at that Super Bowl. I've been very fortunate. I've been to 5 Super Bowls, and I was at that game. But although for me, believe it or not, the highlight of that game was seeing the halftime show, and Prince is the only time I've ever seen Prince perform. And that was just absolutely fabulous. But as far as last season, I would probably have to say the Packer game, because especially on the heels of the opening season loss, there was so much hype for that game, and the team just came out just so focused on a mission. And while the Packers made it exciting, it was pretty obvious what the dominant team was in that game.
All right, a question from Stacy, and she would like you both to comment on the kicking situation in 2018. I guess if there's a villain in your book, maybe it's Cody Parkey. I don't know. And your thoughts on what's happening in this offseason with the kicking situation. So if you guys can comment on that.
To be honest, the real villain is Ryan Pace, because they got rid of Robbie Gould over dollars and cents, and yet look what he's done in the interim time. And even though he probably would like to come back, I'm not sure the mechanism is there for that. Oh, that kicking situation, it's going to be interesting. That's all I can say.
Yeah, they're trying, and that sounds passive aggressive when I say that, but they really are confronting this, and maybe they shouldn't make so much of a spectacle about it, but they're getting the team around it and they're saying like, we're confronting this. We're taking this head on. We're going to go as many possibilities as we can. And, maybe it doesn't end, it ends up not working out, but it's at least entertaining to follow.
All right, and then my question is for Steven. It sounds like you've been around Hallis Hall for a long time. Can you please compare the vibe at Hallis Hall with under Matt Nagy's leadership as opposed to some of the coaches we've had in the past?
Well, that's quite easy. Yeah, I go every week, several times a week. And throughout the years, they're professional players. Even some of those teams that were just awful, the players come, they show up. And even though, quote unquote, it's a paycheck, if you think about it, they're young guys. They're playing a game they love. They've played all their life. But in 2018, you could just sense the excitement that every Wednesday and Thursday they couldn't wait to get out on the field on Sunday. Just that enthusiasm that Nagy bring was so infectious that from the water boys to the workout guys to the equipment managers, everybody had that enthusiasm, that esprit de corps, so to speak, which was just really good to see.
And Aldo, I got a question for you. The fact that Charlie was 7 during that Super Bowl, does that make you feel old?
Well, I'm pretty close to getting my first Social Security check, so that's making me feel old.
The hits just keep on coming. All right. Fellas, for both of you, go ahead.
Please tell people you can get the book on Amazon.
I was just going to ask. Just going to ask you that.
It's a whopping $2.99. So please go out there and buy a few dozen copies, and tell all your friends. Just go on. If you want, actually, there's a link right from our site. It might be easier to find. InternetFM.com, right at the top. It'll show you how to get there. Otherwise, Return to Respectability it's on Amazon. It's on the Kindle. And, I think it's a good read. You said you liked it, so that's a good sign. I didn't even have to pay you to say that.
Well, before we get you guys out of here, in case people want to interact with you or want to know more about the book, how can they connect with either one of you on social media?
Yeah, follow me on Twitter at CRBevins11. I tweet pretty lukewarm takes, so yeah.
Mine is Radio Mogul on Twitter. And, of course, our website is InternetFM.com, which it's sports and music. So, what else is there in life?
100%. We're talking to Steven Leventhal and Charlie Bevins. They wrote the 2018 Chicago Bears Return to Respectability. Guys, thank you so much for being on. And maybe there's a 2019 version brewing up that might have a better ending.
Hopefully, it'll be a better ending, yeah.
John, Aldo, thanks so much, guys.
Thanks so much, guys. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. That was Steven Leventhal and Charlie Bevins. They wrote the 2018 Chicago Bears Return to Respectability. Well, you know what that means, Aldo.
What does it mean, John?
Wake up, Aldo. I thought you were taking control. I thought are we doing the extended score version of this? It's the second round of 555. When's the last time you took a cue? Come on.
That's right. It is supposed to be my cue. This is the second set of our 555 questions. I'm out of practice. What can I say? That's such
Jeez, it's the off season for everybody, apparently.
That was hilarious. All right. This, again, is where I'm going to ask John 5 more questions. He's going to have 55 seconds for each of them. And actually, in the 5th question, we usually turn off the clock, and we'll do that again this time. John, I know you are ready, but I got to ask you anyway, are you ready to begin the second set of 555?
The real question, are you ready? We know we're on the air.
We are, and we're live, too.
Yeah.
I think I'm ready. All right. You have studied, I'm assuming, the 2019 schedule. I've heard that schedule isn't as difficult that it appears, and I've heard that it's among the most challenging for any team, and I've heard that the NFL schedule is always fluid, so I've heard it all. But I want to hear what you think of this schedule. Can you break it down for us and just share your thoughts on how tough it is or isn't? You are on the clock.
All right, stick with me. I always try to give the worst case scenario with room to go above and beyond. Let's start with the division games. I think they can sweep Detroit, and the worst case scenario is they split with Minnesota and Green Bay. Once again, I'm downplaying things. Stick with me. So that's 4 wins and 2 losses in the division. They get Denver early on, the Fangio Bowl. I like that they catch Denver early. They're still going to be getting in sync with Vic and Flacco at quarterback. I like that as a win. Kind of the same thing with Washington. 2 weeks later, they're at Oakland. I think they can win that game. So we're at 7 wins right there. Then a stretch of New Orleans, the LA Chargers, and the Eagles. Let's bomb it and say the Bears only win 1 of 3 there. Once again, we're downplaying. That's 8 wins. Then a stretch of the Rams, Giants, Cowboys, Chiefs. Let's throw it all to hell and say the Bears only win 1 of 4 there, which I think they're going to win more, but let's keep the theme going. So that's 4-2 in the division, wins over Denver, Washington, and Oakland, with 1 win over either New Orleans, LA, or Philadelphia, and then 1 win over either Rams, Giants, Cowboys, or Chiefs. That's 9 wins, and I feel like I'm lowballing it. That's all based on going 4-2 in the division, albeit, but I see the win range being from 9 to 12 here, and I'm okay with that. The Bears should be okay with that.
You know, we were talking about this on the special that we had, the schedule release party. Danny and Shane and I and a couple other guys were talking, and I get the feeling that, you know, maybe the Bears won't win as many games as they did last season, but be a better team. What's your sense of that?
Well, I think that's true because, the schedule on paper as it is, they're playing much better teams going into it. They're playing, you got to play the Cowboys, you got to play the Chiefs, you got to play the Rams. And then, obviously they've had their issues with the Philadelphia Eagles, and then they got to play New Orleans and the Chargers. Those are all really good teams. Now, there aren't any gimmies on there. There are no gimmies in the NFL. We saw that in the Giants game last year, but the stretch as it is pretty tough. But if they can come out of that and make the playoffs, they're going to be a dangerous team.
They really, really are. Man, I'm getting so psyched up. And people in the chat room are like ready to suit up too. So
yeah, I'm ready.
Let's move on to question number 2. We've talked about the depth at the running back and receiver positions, but how do you assess the tight end position? And how do you think this Utah State tight end, Dax Raymond, is going to play out with this team? Can he help this team this year? You got 55 seconds, and they begin when you begin.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned. Last year, maybe I was too excited about Trey Burton. I believe I said he was going to lead the Bears in receptions. That's about as hot takey as I get, by the way. 54 catches for 569 yards and 6 touchdowns. That's okay, but you'd like to see more. Hopefully he makes a jump. It's kind of a make-or-break year for Adam Shaheen. This guy has to stay on the field. When you take a converted basketball player out of a small school like Ashland, staying healthy is the most important part in development. If you're in the trainer's room, you aren't learning. You aren't getting in tune with your teammates. 17 catches in 2 years isn't going to do it. And I really, really want to see this guy succeed. He has all the physical tools to be great, but he needs to put in a full, solid season. As for Raymond, comes in as a 24-year-old rookie. Don't necessarily love that, but the size is good at 6'5", 255, but he also has some room to put some bulk onto that frame if he wants to. Solid pass catcher, smooth route runner. Am I super excited about him? Not really. Maybe not this year. Maybe in 2020. But the pecking order in this tight ends, core is so fluid that anything could happen.
Yeah, I've got a little prediction on Dax Raymond. I think he's going to look like a tight end version of Ryan Nall. He's going to impress us in preseason, and then the Bears are going to try to figure out a way to stash him because he still needs time to develop. I don't think he's an NFL blocker yet, but I do think that he's got the skills to help out in the passing game almost immediately. Based on what I saw down at the Senior Bowl, but he's definitely going to be a player to keep an eye on. He's a really interesting fellow too.
Very raw, and we'll see how quickly they can progress. Once again, coming in as a rookie at 24 years old, we'll see if that helps or hurts.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, question number 3. We have not had an opportunity to talk about the changes on the coaching staff. Vic Fangio now has gone to Denver, as you know, and he's taken Ed Donatel with him, the DB's coach, who's both of those guys did a tremendous job here in Chicago. And now, of course, Chuck Pagano is the new DC, and Brad Childress is back as the senior offensive assistant. And my understanding is it's a season-long contract, so he's not going to leave us like he did last season. What are your thoughts on this new coaching staff? You got 55 seconds.
Well, let's start with Childress real quick. He was an offensive analyst last year, jumped to the AAF for a sandwich, and now he's back as a senior offensive assistant. So this is kind of getting the band back together. They must have supported his decision to be a head coach because it didn't work out to no fault of his own, but now he's back. Kind of reminds me of Dick LeVeaux bouncing back and forth between Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, but he got some great offensive minds here. Nagy, Helfrich, Childress. Obviously, there isn't too much headbutting or tension there because Childress came back, and they welcomed him back. Maybe he wouldn't have came back if it was a tense atmosphere, so that's a good sign, at least I think. As for the defense, I expect to see some subtle changes. Pagano apparently likes to be aggressive, and we could see some more blitzing, maybe some coverage changes. In the end, the unit is intact, sans a few role players, but I think a big attribute that gets looked over sometimes on the defensive side of the ball is, do the players buy in and respect the guy they're playing for? Pagano is a lovable guy. His players went to bat for him numerous times, from him battling cancer to him retaining his job in Indianapolis. I think the Bears defense were going to want to play for this guy and give him everything they got. They'd had that in Vic Fangio. They're getting the same in Pagano. It must be an Italian thing. Not that I'm a bias or anything.
What I'm looking forward to the most with Pagano's defense is that he blitzes more often than Fangio. And, yeah, that's dangerous. But, he doesn't blitz more than other NFL coaches. Based on what I read, he blitzes about the league average, and Fangio was down towards the bottom of the average. But I'd love to see, Leonard Floyd and some of the DBs get after the quarterback and just kind of bring back some of that 85 Bears terrorizing defense style. What do you think about that?
Oh, 100%. And we saw a few times where you wish they would have blitzed a little bit more. There were some times, and trust me, I'm going to miss Vic Fangio. We all are. But sure, there were some times where it's just like, wow, where's the adjustment? Why isn't there not more pressure being put on? So maybe we see that. I'm not going to say that Pagano's going to be head and shoulders better than Fangio, but maybe in some of those situations we see a more aggressive defense whenever it's necessary.
Stacy in the chat room says that she thinks Fangio is going to have a hard time in Denver. Unfortunately for him, what do you think about Fangio being a head coach at Denver with the roster as it looks like now?
Well, I mean, I think the defense will be pretty solid. I think his format will do well there. They got a lot of questions on the offensive side of the ball. Is Joe Flacco your guy? They drafted the Lott kid. The receivers are getting a little older. I think that they're going to struggle. I can't. It all depends on when you're a defensive head coach in the NFL. You're basically you're a head coach and you're running the show, but offense is that's why you're seeing so many offensive coaches get head gigs, because they want an offensive minded guy taking the helm there. So I don't know. I think that he is going to struggle, but I think that was expected. There's a reason they had to get rid of the last coach, is because the team wasn't that good. So right. We'll see.
Yeah, frankly, I was shocked that Elway went with a defensive coordinator, especially after the fiasco that was John Fox. Now, I say fiasco. He took them deep into the playoffs a couple of times, but nonetheless, he was not happy with John Fox, and to kind of pick another coach with that same kind of old school mentality, I was a little shocked by that. But I wish him well, as long as he's not playing the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, outside of, I think, week 2, good luck to him.
There you go. Oh, yeah, and did you hear that the Broncos have like this remarkable record for game twos in their career? They're like 30-2 or something like that.
Well, 30-3 sounds a lot better.
I love it. All right, question number 4. I've been dying to hear your response to this one. I want you to pick out 1 or 2, or however many you want, breakout players for 2019. Are we thinking Shaheen? Are we thinking Wims? I don't know. Who and why? You got 55 seconds.
I want to say Eddie Pinheiro, please. Please let Eddie El Pinheiro be the answer between the posts. Please, football gods. I believe El Pinheiro is Spanish for the leg. We're going to have to ask our international fans here. But as far as, guys on the field who are on the field a little bit more, I don't know if it's really a breakout player, but I'm going to say Anthony Miller. 33 catches for 423 yards last year. Not great, but led the team in receiving touchdowns with 7. This was the guy that was super hyped about being with the Bears. Reports were that he was running around crazy crazy with the too much energy and wasn't always controlled or as smooth as he should have been, and kind of trying to settle into that position. I think those rookie jitters are going to pass this year. We're going to see a guy that not only catches 8 to 10 touchdowns, but also starts racking up the catches and yards. I think he will at least double his catches and double his yards this year. So that's looking at 66 catches for around 850 yards with 8 to 10 touchdowns. I think that's a big and productive leap for Anthony Miller. I think he shows up on the box score a lot more consistently in 2019.
Yeah, I agree with you. The thing too also about Miller that outside of the stats is if he can become better at running the routes as they're diagrammed on the playbook, because I think that was one of the situations with the coaching staff and him. So if he can nail that and just be trustworthy, Trubisky will love him a lot more. But yeah, the guy has limitless talent. He could be an Antonio Brown type player for the Chicago Bears for many years.
Yeah, and one of the things coming out of the draft was how well he ran routes. So maybe it took a year to kind of get comfortable with the routes they're running. He's going to know the system, as we talked about a little bit before. Is that these guys are coming into the same system, they're not having to relearn something. He's had an entire year to get on the same page with Trubisky. I just think this is the table is set for Anthony Miller to have a really nice season.
I love it. All right, the clock is off. Our final question, as it is with every Buffone 55 show, at least I think we've been doing this 2 years now, where your final question in the second half is where you do a pep talk. And I thought it would be fun for you to do a pep talk to some very special people in the Chicago Bears. Now, coaching staffs, they rarely are the recipients of pep talks, as far as I know. And this Bear staff might be the least likely to need one. Nonetheless, I thought it might be pretty cool for you to motivate the motivators. So the clock is off, and whenever you're ready, go for it.
Well, fellas, we're in that interesting pocket between the draft being over, rookie camps coming and going, and we're starting to fully jump into the 2019 season prep. Now, I know a lot of you guys aren't on Twitter because you're all up there in age a little bit, but let me pull back the curtain. Everyone thinks this squad is a flash-in-the-pan team. They think Matt isn't the offensive mastermind he's made out to be. They think losing Vic was the worst thing that's happened to this franchise since hiring Mel Tucker as the defensive coordinator. They think the team was lucky for staying healthy, something the Bears haven't been able to do in a decade. They think the defense is going to fall way back with Chuck leading the way. They think the schedule is going to bury you. They think the Bears were just a placeholder in 2018, that the Vikings and Packers are still going to battle it out for first place. For God's sakes, you were just put as 12th in the league power rankings by CBS. Such disrespect. Well, I'm tired of hearing this team is a fraud. I'm tired of hearing that this team is just a one-year wonder, that they're the Chumbawamba of the NFL. I'm sure you're tired of hearing it too. So instead of firing back verbally, let's start building up the arsenal. Build this team up now, so in September, you shut those teams up by punching them square in the mouth. September is coming, fellas, but right now, we prepare. And that means we're going to take another hiatus from Buffone 55, but we're going to be back soon. We're just getting warmed up, guys. It's going to be a long season. This episode of Buffone 55 will be on your podcast stream Friday morning. Please make sure you share it with your friends and give us a review. We're on all the podcast delivery systems: iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, Zanga. Do people still have Zangas? Does anybody remember Zanga? You name it. All you have to do is search for Bears Barroom Radio Network, and we will pop up. Aldo, what you got?
Well, I want to remind people that the Mike North Advantage is now on Mondays at 7 p.m. live. We talk sports and do interviews. And then on Wednesday, we start a little earlier. Vegas Scores and Odds is sponsoring that show. And Mike will give out 3 free picks for that night's action. He was 2-1 yesterday, so if you want to make a little cash, tune in next Wednesday at 4 o'clock, and then at 3 o'clock, and then I try to get the podcast out as quickly as possible for those of you driving home and thinking about laying a little bet on the game and enjoying the game a little bit more and making some milk money. All right, also, the Barfly Tailgate Show is back. Their first episode with a new crew is on your podcast stream. Take a listen to that. Oh, my gosh, these guys brought it. And then next Tuesday is the debut of Blitz Bears. It's a new show produced by the guys who have brought you Blitzed NFL. John Buffone has been a guest a number of times on that show. They are going to have their own unique take on the Bears. That's it for me, John. You take it home.
Oh, man, Aldo, it's so great to be back in the bar room. Can't wait to do this on a more consistent basis. Barflies, thanks for tuning in. Till next time, we'll see you later.